Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. Yes, Big Lubbock, we are indeed live. We are live, ready to go. Man, all sorts of stuff happening right now. We got a Big 12 schedule release. People are not happy about it. I agree with a lot of the concerns here, but I think we're kind of all wrong. And I'm going to tell you why here to start the show. Bit of a Big 12 TV gamble that is happening based on the schedule that we saw dropped earlier this week. Big 12 basketball heating up right now. I talked about the officiating controversy. We have no statement from Brett Yormark about any of that. Nothing that happened in the Arizona State game. They're having guys kicked out left and right. The Arizona State game, that happened over the weekend. Arizona State lost in crazy fashion last night to K-State. You've got the KU Iowa State game. Jayhawks think perhaps they are back after one of the sickest alley-oops that you'll ever see. All things that we can potentially talk about, but I really want to hone in on, obviously, the TV release, as I mentioned. Plus, Pat Forty, all right, Yahoo College Football Inquirer podcast. He writes for Sports Illustrated. He has pretty flippantly decided that the ACC is much more well-positioned than the Big 12 is right now after getting the assurance with the ESPN TV contract that they're basically going to have a league locked up for the next 5 years. Well, around here, you know, being that I am in Big 12 country and a Big 12-centric audience here, that's probably going to ruffle some feathers. We'll examine it, okay? I will give this a fair shake, what Pat Forty had to say about the ACC and the Big 12. Speaking of perhaps being a little bit offended, some feathers ruffled, On3 did exactly that with a list of the top 25 coaches in America, and I think it was poking at Big 12 country as much as anybody because I will say you're not going to believe who they have as the top-ranked Big 12 coach. There are many of you who cynically probably would say, well, yes, John, actually, I can believe that, but give you a hint. It's not one of the coaches that you hear up for every single major job opening that seems to come open in college football. And we even got a perfect conference realignment plan rolled out for everybody. So if you're interested in something that will make everybody happy, or at least should, stick around for that on the show today as well. Okay, you guys know how it works. If you have been here before, you can fill up the chat, first of all. Love all of you guys who do that. If you want to ensure that your question or comment makes it on the show tonight, click the $ below the chat box in order to do that. You can leave a super chat that way. Appreciate everybody who does that. Could not do it without all of your support, so thank you very, very much. But there are totally free ways to support the channel as well. Those much appreciated also. If you just like the video, that would be incredible. Would really appreciate it if you did that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Go ahead and click subscribe, click that bell so you get alerts every time I'm going live. I know sometimes the timing changes a bit. This is kind of back in my traditional time slot, but if the timing changes, if I'm doing things a little bit differently, you will know. You will get a notification right away. And you may need it. We'll see what's going to happen on Sunday. Super Bowl Sunday. I'm obviously not going to do a show during the Super Bowl. Not just for my own sake, because I am a Kansas City Chiefs fan, but also because everyone's going to be watching it. And by the way, I've got my Kansas City versus everybody hoodie on. So you're welcome, everybody, for that. Feels like Kansas City versus everybody this weekend. Anyway, looking forward to watching Texas Tech Big 12 quarterback Patrick Mahomes. I saw today was like the how many years would it have been? It was the picture of the anniversary of when Texas Tech actually signed Patrick Mahomes out of high school. So nice picture of him and Cliff. Anyway, I digress. We'll see. May just have to skip the show on Sunday. May try and get one in like early afternoon if anybody is up for that. But we'll see. We'll see. Also, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to leave a question or comment that way and you're not able to watch live, you can drop your question or comment with a donation there. And I will kick off the next show with it. So you can stay connected even if you are not able to watch these live. And of course, make sure you are subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. It's ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to get subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Or you can just click the link in the description of this video. It is there as well. Lots of easy ways to get in tune with that. Great way to support me right now for free. 3,400 plus Big 12 fans already do subscribe, and you'll just get no Big 10, no SEC. I'm going to filter the college football news for the Big 12 straight to you. So make sure you do that if you want that in your inbox multiple times per week for free, that is. Okay, let's get rolling. Big 12 schedule was released. I guess I could show you the graphic from the Big 12. I would just suggest going to big12sports.com if you want to see the big, giant, massive grid. It's not exactly easy to show you in any sort of form or fashion here on this video. But the thing that you will need to know about this Big 12 schedule release, other than obviously if you're a fan of one particular team, you would want to go seek out your own team. But big picture, broad takeaway, the Big 12 kind of did away with rivalry week, more or less. You have the Territorial Cup. Arizona State will still be last week of the regular season, which has traditionally been reserved for rivalry week. The Big 12 stripped away a lot of it, and that has people freaking out. And I understand why. I definitely understand why. It seems like BYU fans in particular are not thrilled with this because it means the Holy War is on October 18th instead of at the end of November. I get it, and I'm with you guys, honestly, those of you that are upset about it. But I will say, I think the Big 12 is right on this one. Okay, so let's dive in. Look, first thing I will say, another point of contention people have with the schedule is that, like, this is the year when they released the schedule for the next 4 years. We saw that there were a number of rivalry games, or at least a couple rivalry games that would only happen 3 out of 4 years instead of happening every single year. People were very bothered by that. K-State, Iowa State being one of those. We're going to get K-State, Iowa State in week 0 this year. But once every 4 years, you're not going to get it. Baylor, Texas Tech is not happening this year. And it is a shame that especially this year of all years is when it falls, because I think that would be a great game this year. Like Texas Tech, Portal Kings, they should be competing for a Big 12 title. Baylor, based on the finish they had, 8-win regular season. Sawyer Robertson, red hot. Like, a lot of guys coming back from that team, spending more now in the portal. I think that will be a phenomenal game. Well, it would be, but it's not going to happen. That is disappointing, and I do wish that the Big 12 would have found a way to make those happen. Having said that, I was not out with a pitchfork over it. I will survive not having K-State, for instance, play Iowa State once every 4 years. I don't think it is the end of the world, and I know that scheduling becomes difficult when you have this many teams in a league, which is a part of just the overall issue with realignment, right? But you do what you can. So I don't like that. And much like I would prefer to have those rivalries every single year, I would prefer to have rivalry week be preserved the way that it always has been. Like, I am a college football, for the most part, traditionalist, like most people are, and it's frustrating to see that so much of it has been stripped away. I understand why people are upset. It sucks. I have just come to a place of acceptance where it's like, I know that a lot of things are not going to be the way that I would really like them to be in the sport. I'm going to just try and make the best of it and enjoy what I can from it. And not having traditional rivalry week falls under that for me. Like, if it were up to me, I'd go back to when it's the late 90s and Keith Jackson is calling your 2:30 ABC game every week. That's the biggest game of the week. I guess we can make it BCS era at that point, like early BCS era. That's how we're determining a national champion. You know, the conferences certainly make a hell of a lot more sense geographically. I'd love to hit the reset button and go back to all of that, which includes, by the way, rivalry week being reserved for the biggest rivalry games. Like, one of the things that I missed the most rivalry week is Colorado, Nebraska. I grew up on that game, man. Like, watching Colorado, Nebraska at the end of the regular season every year. 100% would love to see it. Last year, Colorado, Nebraska played early, right? Like, the last couple of years, they have played early. It's better than no Colorado, Nebraska. So I'm at least taking solace in that. We're not going to get the Holy War during rivalry week, but at least we have it. We don't get to see Bedlam anymore. So, if you could stick Bedlam in the middle of October, I would take that over what we have now, which is not having Bedlam. So some of this is just me already adapting my mindset and attitude toward the new reality in college football. I will admit that. I also do think, though, that there is some sound logic here from the Big 12 and what I imagine is probably happening with this. Okay, because if you're taking some of your best games, be it like your best, most fierce rivalries, if it's K-State, Iowa State, if you're going to say it is Baylor, TCU, if you're going to say obviously the Holy War, well, Holy War being front and center, especially, goodness, after what we saw last year and all the sparks that flew during and after that game. If you put it during rivalry week, it is a guarantee it's getting overshadowed nationally. There's no chance that it's not, because you'll have Ohio State, Michigan, you'll have the Iron Bowl. Just every major rivalry game is already taking place that weekend. So it's going to get drowned out. You virtually have no chance at it not getting drowned out on a national scale. If you put the game on October 18th, there's at least a chance that it could become featured game of the day or one of the most featured games of the day. A chance of getting it a little bit more national spotlight and attention, which equates to more eyeballs, which is obviously the ultimate currency here and the ultimate goal. So that's probably, if I'm just going to lay it out like this, like you're looking at, you got a 0% chance on rivalry week because that's just built in and the way the rest of college football is going to go with having those rivalry games there that weekend, or I don't know, 5% chance, 10% chance, whatever you'd want to label it at, that it would get some legitimate real national run or attention on October 18th. That's the gamble that you're making. And there is no gamble if you have it during rivalry week. It will satisfy the traditionalists. It will satisfy all of our typical natural instincts as fans. And I understand that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. But if you're talking about business standpoint, dollars and cents, what you have to do, I feel like a lot of us, I know I have certainly accepted this reality. We have talked about it ad nauseum on this channel over the last 4 years. But the Big 12 has to do things differently than everybody else. The Big 12 is going to have to do things differently than the Big 10 or SEC. If you try and play them at their game and do it the same way, you're just not going to beat them. It's like Mike Leach when he took over at Texas Tech. If he were going to try and take on Texas, doing it the exact same way that they're doing, pro-style offense, recruiting, just trying to recruit the best five-star talent on rivals, probably not going to beat Texas at that game. But if you all of a sudden go to this crazy air raid offense that nobody has seen, doesn't know how to defend, recruit different athletes that fit that, well, now all of a sudden you're talking. You're doing something differently. You gotta be a little bit Mike Leach here. And I know it's not always fun. It's not always something we love, but it's at least giving it a shot. It's giving it an effort to do it a different way that could be more beneficial to you. I think this is one of those things that it will be frustrating every step of the way for the fans when things like this happen, because it's not what any of us really, truly deep down want. But it is what the Big 12 is pretty much forced into trying. And some of this I know will come down to there are fans and people that have frustrations with Brett Yormark. I mean, shoot, you saw Starter 179, great Big 12 fan, great Texas Tech fan, but he and I were going back and forth a little bit on the last live show on Sunday about what happened with JT Toppin in the Texas Tech game and frustration that Yormark's not doing enough. And, I'm sure Tech doesn't feel great about that now because there's been no statement or no, punishment that we know of anyway, anything like that's happened. And there are people that are frustrated with hey, this is clearly it's not Brett Yormark's strong suit, the actual ins and outs. I would call it more like the X's and O's of running a conference. He's great with the big picture stuff, great with being the CEO, but he's not the X's and O's guy. Now, you need to hire great coordinators. If we're furthering this coach analogy, you need to hire great coordinators if you're going to be the great CEO guy. And maybe the Big 12 hasn't, some people would tell you, hasn't done well enough with that yet. I think they're getting better. but that's not really what he's here for or what his strong suit is. Unfortunately, it pales in comparison in terms of the overall significance to the health of the league. That stuff, the quote unquote X's and O's here, pales in comparison to the importance of landing the big picture CEO stuff, which is what he is good at. And this is a part of it. This is a part of it. So I feel like I'm just dishing out a little bit of reality there for you. Unfortunately, but I understand if you don't like it. This is one I'm not going to fight you too hard on it. If you're complaining about it and you don't like it, because I get it. And deep down inside, I am with you. I will forever pine for what the college football of my childhood was. I wish we were still there, but we're just not. And if you're a Big 12 fan or an ACC fan, by the way, you're just going to have to accept that. Okay, so people aren't happy about rivalry week getting ditched by the Big 12 in what I believe to be a gamble for better attention, TV coverage, more eyeballs for your league by spreading out some of those games the rest of the calendar. By the way, October 18th is going to be an interesting one because TCU Baylor, which I think is another one of the great rivalries in the conference, TCU Baylor is going to be there as well on that same date, October 18th. You know, people tend to ask, or when a schedule gets released, all right, like, what are you most looking forward to? What are the best games of the year? Well, I want to start by saying you got to be careful with this. I can give you some and will give you some here, including one aspect of the Big 12 schedule that I don't see being talked about nearly enough. That to me is my favorite part, honestly, of the Big 12 schedule. But you got to be careful when you're doing like games of the year. This will be the game of the year. These are the games to watch out for. I know we all need content. We just we all want to scoop up whatever football we can in February. But if we did this at this time last year, and I did do some of this, yeah, it's going to come back looking foolish when you're doing it for the Big 12. SEC, a little bit more predictable. Big 10, probably going to be pretty predictable. Which big games are there? Big 10 is going to have like 4 teams that are good. Everybody else, So whenever those 4 teams play each other, circle those games, call it good. Hard to do in the Big 12. What games are you circling? I mean, we can do it based on who was at the top of the league last year. But I don't know if you saw how the league played out this year relative to the standings. It was wildly different, like vastly different. Okay. In fact, like I can remember telling you on this channel when the schedule came out last year, hey, a game that you really should watch out for that is not one of the like headline big games, but I think kind of getting second tier treatment that should be one of the headline big games. End of the year, Utah at UCF. That's what I told you was going to be a massive game. Nobody paid any attention to that game at all. It meant nothing. It meant basically nothing at the end of the year between 2 teams that were not bowl bound. So you can swing and miss big time. And I think that's going to happen almost every year in this conference because of just how much volatility there's going to be. So on the flip side of that, not a single soul was sitting here saying, hey, you know which game you should really have circled on the Big 12 schedule, Big 12 game of the year, conference championship, college football playoff implications all over the place. BYU at Arizona State. Get ready. Circle that one at the back end of the calendar. BYU at Arizona State, all right? That's the game. No, nobody said that. Nobody said that at all. So you got to be really careful. Here's my favorite part of the schedule. That's not being talked about enough. I feel like last year's Big 12 non-conference schedule, there was a lot of discussion, myself included, about you don't have that much of a chance to really make a statement on a national stage. And it's not like there are games against Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia lined up for the Big 12 in the non-conference schedule. But it feels like there's an opportunity for a little bit more of that. And there's just an abundance of really intriguing non-conference games for the league. If you want to slip in week 0 Farmageddon, which counts as a conference game, I mean, like, you could do that too. Or if you're going to, like, K-State is at Arizona. That's a non-conference game, much like they played in a non-league game this past year. So you could add that to the list too. But man, if you're talking about opportunities, Oregon was the number 1 team in the college football playoff the seeding going into it. Oklahoma State travels to Oregon. That will happen in the non-conference schedule. Oklahoma State travels to Oregon. That's awesome. That's a great opportunity for the Big 12 and a game that will be really fun. Hopefully, I guess I say hopefully, that should be the caveat there because Mike Gundy's got to get things back in order. But, changed up his contract, donated some money to NIL. I can't imagine them being nearly as bad this year as they were last year. Alan Bowman's not going to be the quarterback. No offense to him, but it just wasn't working last year. Think they needed a hard reset as far as that goes. What better shot than going to Autzen? That will be fascinating. First week of the season, right? Week one. Week one, you've got Auburn coming to Baylor. Auburn should be better this year. This is a big year for Hugh Freeze. I wouldn't predict that Auburn is going to be a national championship contender or anything like that, but Auburn is a very volatile program. They will have high highs or low lows. Think like TCU. They're kind of TCU-ish, where TCU seems to either have 12 wins or 5 or 6 wins every single year without much in between. That's Auburn. Going to Baylor. Really, really interesting non-conference game. How about TCU at North Carolina? First game of the Bill Belichick era is going to be TCU traveling to North Carolina. Now, TCU has already gone through almost this exact same situation when they were the first opponent of Coach Prime in a non-conference game. Now, that was at home, and Colorado won that game, and that really springboarded the attention for Colorado and brought in a sub-500 season for TCU, something I'm sure they want to forget. You get a chance to go. There are going to be so many eyeballs on that game. Bill Belichick's first game, that is going to draw a huge number. A huge number. What a chance for TCU there. Go out and beat Bill Belichick, man. It'd be amazing. Sonny Dykes v. Bill Belichick, coaching Titans. You've got KU Mizzou. What did I just say? I'm a college football traditionalist. Everything we love about the sport. Like, give me KU Mizzou every single year, man. All year, every year. Grew up watching that game. Obviously, here in Kansas City, being a Kansas City kid. Love that. Love that game is happening. And then we have the backyard brawl. Pitt at West Virginia. This time it's coming to WVU. And how about Pitt, West Virginia with Rich Rod back? And we all remember, sorry, West Virginia fans, close your ears. One very infamous game when Rich Rod took on his arch rival as the head coach of the Mountaineers. So there are some good non-conference games. I love the non-conference schedule. Love the non-conference schedule on paper. Now, if you're asking me, okay, what will be the biggest Big 12 games of the year? This, again, is where it's like I hesitate to even do it because I'm sure it will wind up looking silly by the end of the year, but hopefully not every single one of these teams can make me look silly. I mean, I hate this as a K-State guy, but week 0 Farmageddon is a really big game. Like, that's a really big conference game, and unfortunately, it's being played week 0 in a different country. So, like, it just exposes you to so much volatility. Who knows what both teams will be then? There's so many different variables. I just hate that in what is such an important game for the conference, but it will be great from an entertainment value perspective for everybody else. Texas Tech at Utah. That's in week 4. If I think Tech should be better, I think Utah will be much better. And in some ways, I was having this discussion with someone else the other day. Hey, would you rather get Utah at the beginning of the Big 12 schedule or the end? And in some ways, I was getting argued against me. Like, I'd rather have them early because by the end, they'll probably have put things together and figured it out with a new quarterback and a lot of changes, new OC, all that. And I thought, okay, yeah, fair. But also they've had so much quarterback injury trouble, and Devin Dampier is a quarterback that likes to run the ball. So maybe it would be better to get them late in the year if you would anticipate that they're going to have injury issues at quarterback again. Either way, that's going to be, I think, a really big game in the Big 12 race. I've got Utah 3 times on this week, on this list. I've got, and all games that they're hosting, by the way. So this is, again, if you're talking about why Utah could be back in Big 12 championship picture next year, Utah hosting Arizona State in week 7. That's another one that I have. And then I have K-State going to Utah late in the year. That is late November when that game happens. If we're going, the rest of this stuff is going to look a lot like, hey, based on what happened last year. So it's a lot of BYU. It's a lot of Iowa State. It's a lot of Arizona State. I've already mentioned Arizona State once. They'll go to Iowa State in week 10. BYU's going to Ames in week 9. BYU's going to Colorado in week 5. So if you're just playing like, hey, last year's schedule, I mean, all those games look absolutely awesome. But who knows? Who knows, man? Who knows what it will actually look like? I think the other game I had here, K-State at Baylor, week 6. I'm really high on Baylor. Really high on Baylor for the upcoming season. So I wanted to make sure that they got included there. That's what I would give you. Big 12 schedule release if you want like Big 12 games of the year. But, man, I would say don't clip this. It's fine. You can clip it. We can all laugh at it in like December or January of next year at the end of this upcoming football season. I'm cool with that. We can definitely do that. Let's say hello to Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate your generous donation as always, my friend. Thank you very much. Daniel says, love the Chiefs hoodie. K-State leads the conference in women's basketball. Yes, I was watching the end of that game right before I hopped on here. K-State knocked off TCU in a battle of top 12 teams at Bramlage Coliseum tonight. Shout out to Jeff Mitty. Also, I love the change in the men's basketball team with another win yesterday. Oh, been recovering from knee surgery. Go Cats and let's three-peat. Hey, best wishes, Daniel. I hope the recovery is going well. That is no fun. Hope you're back on your feet, up and at 'em very, very shortly. Yeah, man, K-State, look, some people now are wanting to talk about it. They're back to 500. They're 5-6 in the league, getting some quad 1 wins. Can they actually get back in the tournament picture? I'm just going to be happy right now with, like, I care about the games again, and they're really fun to watch, and I'm enjoying this immensely. So that's where I'm at. Back-to-back road wins, and say what you will about, Jaden Quinton's had to miss 2 free throws at the end of the game for K-State to win by 1. But they won a road game against a bubble team right before the KU game, which they're going to be looking ahead to, you would imagine, and right off of the biggest win of their season, which was the 19-point win at Iowa State. So that's a tough spot to go on the road and get a win like that. And then they fell behind 15-0 and still won the game. So I'm not apologizing for a damn thing about the way K-State won that game yesterday. Yes. Appreciate you, Daniel. Thank you for being here, my friend. All right, Alan, let's go, Alan. Alan says, John, Christmas came early. New schedule has Jayhawks playing Mizzou, a fan base we love to hate. Hopefully a chance for KU to embarrass the SEC. Hope to see you in Lawrence at the KSU game. Hey, there we go, Alan. That's a big-time opportunity for Kansas to help out the Big 12 with an SEC road win against a program that has been pretty good last couple of years. Much as I hate to admit it, with Eli Drinkwitz, they have been pretty good last 2 years. Would love for Kansas to walk in there and beat them. I will be pulling for the Jayhawks. We'll see about that game in Lawrence, man. I don't know. With Lance Leipold as the coach, I don't want to be there when the streak ends. And it's a threat. It's a threat every year with him as the head coach. So we'll see. We'll see, Alan. You got plenty of time to work on me for that. But thank you for being here, and thank you for your support of the channel, my friend. Okay. You can click the $sign below the chat box, submit a super chat if you want to make sure your question or comment makes it on the show tonight. Please subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. All you got to do is click the link in the description of this video to do that. It's ofbnews.com. If you're on Twitter, ofbnews.com to do that. Just ofbnews.com. Get Big 12 news straight to your inbox multiple times per week, totally free. Filtering through all the Big 10 and SEC crap to bring you just the news that matters to the Big 12 for free. So please do that. Like the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. Let's talk Big 12 ACC, shall we? Try to take a drink here real quick. All right. So the ACC, I would tell you, as long as things don't come totally off the rails with Florida State and Clemson and getting some sort of settlement now that the ESPN contract has been figured out, the ACC, I think, has secured its future for the next 5 years. Now, because of that, we're getting national media saying that they're in a much better spot than the Big 12, which didn't get to like Big 12, Pac-12 levels of rivalry and back and forth. But the Big 12 ACC conversation, the chatter, has been fairly heated over the last 18 months or so. So I know how this will land in Big 12 circles. People are not really going to like that very much. I do think it's a little bit lazy. I think it's a little bit lazy. And I will tell you why. But here is what I'm referring to. Pat Forty, who writes for Sports Illustrated, but I just listen to him on the Yahoo College Football Pod, College Football Inquirer, where I think he does do a very good job. But he wrote this in a big piece that was really focused on the ACC and its basketball conundrum right now. But he said, the SEC and Big Ten will continue to hog much of the available revenue, which is simply the law of the jungle. But the ACC and Big 12 are viable power conferences that should remain competitive across the board. And the ACC is the better positioned of those two. The ACC is the better positioned of those two conferences. The ACC put 2 teams in the expanded 12-team playoff this past season. It has put 4 teams in the last 3 men's Final Fours. It has placed 8 teams in the last 9 Final Fours of both the men's and women's tournaments. And get ready for this, it perennially populates the upper echelon of the Learfield Directors Cup standings for all sports programs. Well, you guys know, if you listened to the show the other day, that I'm just going to love that point, that we're bringing up the Learfield Directors Cup, which is given to the best overall athletic program in the country. So you're relying heavily on Olympic sports success to win the Learfield Directors Cup. Yeah, let's just start by throwing that out. Here in this discussion, we're going to have no talks about the Learfield Directors Cup. Congratulations, ACC, on landing Stanford. That'll help you in the Learfield Directors Cup. I don't care. It doesn't matter in any sort of realignment discussion. Now, I'm not trying to belittle or diminish those sports, but as it relates to the strength of a conference and how it relates to the conference realignment landscape, which is what we were talking about here, no effect. None whatsoever. Learfield Directors Cup, not going to have any effect there. I mean, look, if you don't believe me, just go start Googling Olympic sports, ACC, and Big Ten, because there have been plenty of articles written this year about how crazy it is, the schedules that those guys are all having to endure going across the country all the time. Mick Cronin, he's even men's basketball, but Mick Cronin, the head coach at UCLA, had a great rant about it. How it makes no sense for the student athlete, but they're doing it because conference realignment and money, and they have to. So no, don't get me started on Learfield Sports Directors Cup. This is all about football and a tiny sliver of basketball. Little bit of basketball in there, little tiny bit. Big 12 is trying to make it more than just a little tiny bit, hopefully, with splitting the 2 TV deals at one point. But for the most part, just a little tiny bit of basketball. Now, one thing I really hate from that statement from Pat Forty was his only comment about football, which again is the most important part of all of this. His only comment about football was, quote, it put 2 teams in the expanded playoff. And that was coming right after they're more well-positioned. They're in a better spot than the Big 12. Well, it's very convenient to just say, well, yeah, they put 2 teams in the expanded playoff. Big 12 only had 1. That sounds really nice, but it's missing the point, because I would tell you the Big 12 easily got the better of the 2 conferences in terms of what happened in the postseason this year. For one, if we're talking about money, it's a wash. It's a moot point. Yes, the ACC had 2 teams make it, but the Big 12 gets 2 of the credits, if you want to call them that, for having Arizona State make it and get a bye. So getting through that first round, you get the money. And then for playing in the second round, you get the money there. So ASU essentially made up like 2 shares of the money there, which would equal what Clemson and SMU did, because they both went down in their first game. They also both lost by double digits. SMU got completely whitewashed. Clemson had a decent showing, but still lost and did not play Texas nearly as close as Arizona State did, the one Big 12 team that was there, who, came within 1 play of getting the Big 12 even more money. But even in doing so and losing, earned the Big 12 a lot of respect and earned themselves a lot of respect. It had a far better performance than the ACC in the playoff, and it led to now people retroactively being like, hey, we probably should have paid more attention to BYU. And the fact that was happening is evidence of the Big 12 having a much better postseason than the ACC. So let's establish that. If we're going to use last year as the barometer here, I mean, the Big 12 had the better postseason. And the postseason is the only way that you're really going to gain tangible currency in this world if you're not the SEC or the Big 10. Now, how will that play out over the next 5 years on the football field? If you want to argue the ACC is more well-positioned because they've got better brands, okay, fine. I will not dispute at all that they have better brands. They've got 3 better brands for sure. I guess 4, really. North Carolina, based largely on basketball brand, but they probably fit in there too. But Florida State, Clemson, Miami, they definitely have better brands. But if we're taking the last year, like the first year that we had this version of the Big 12 going up against this version of the ACC, what did the brand value do for you? Miami had a nice season. Miami did have a nice season, but even then they missed the playoff with a generational talent at quarterback. Florida State was a complete disaster. Florida State won 2 games this year. They finished dead last, 17th out of 17 teams in the ACC. They're going to have to pull themselves out of 2-win season hell here to get things moving forward again. Clemson won the league, but I think this year, as much as almost any, established that they're still like a good step and a half behind the real elite tier in college football. So, I get two of the 3 had good seasons, but it didn't equate to any kind of playoff or postseason success. And then one of the teams was a total disaster, and we'll see how they're going to be able to pull themselves out from that. So based on the evidence that we have of these conferences going head to head, like 1v1, I mean, I would tell you it's not a knockout or anything, but the Big 12 won more rounds than the ACC by just a little bit. But when it really counted, I'm going to tilt the scale toward the Big 12, actually. For this year 1 in football, while acknowledging the ACC has better brands and a better opportunity via those brands to bring in more talent that could give them a better opportunity to compete in the playoff. But hell, man, Arizona State was definitely out-talented against Texas, and we all saw what happened in that game. So the ACC's got to earn it if they're going to do that. Now, the hoops, I mentioned hoops is at least a little part of this. The whole crux of the article was like, well, the ACC's got a real basketball problem. I mean, that's trending toward being like a 4-bid league this year in the NCAA tournament. It's not good. Duke is the only team that looks like they've got a shot to make a deep run, whereas in the Big 12, it's a down year in the Big 12, and yet you would still say like Texas Tech, Arizona, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, all those teams, that's 5 teams I just rattled off there that would be in that same category as Duke that like have a chance to make a deep run, have a legitimate chance, I would say, whereas you got 1 in the ACC. And the problem is for the ACC now, like so many of their great coaches have retired. Roy Williams, this really is remarkable when you go through this list. Roy Williams, Coach K, Mike Bray at Notre Dame, Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, Tony Bennett, Virginia, Jim Larinaga, Miami, Leonard Hamilton. You're talking about 4 national champion coaches there between K, Roy Williams, Tony Bennett, Jim Boeheim. 4 national championship coaches, another Final Four coach in Larinaga. I don't know. Leonard Hamilton ever make a Final Four? Hamilton and Bray, pretty damn good in their own right. You're having to replace all that talent right now. So basketball, I mean, I'm definitely giving the edge to the Big 12 easily. It's just, how much does basketball actually matter? And then money, you got to be careful here, folks. Do not believe everything that you read on the internet because money, you can see some graphics out there floating around right now among ACC propagandist circles that were created by an old friend of anybody who's been following college football conference realignment. For, if you're an OG or that's been following it on the internet for, 3-4 years here, you certainly know what I'm talking about there. But don't believe the graphics that are showing that the ACC got $50 million in media payouts alone, that's what's coming in here. That is not even close to accurate. Their entire payout, like media and everything else from the conference, was $44.8 million for fiscal year 2023, and that is $600,000 per school more than the Big 12. That's it. They're basically dead even, Big 12 and ACC, in terms of fiscal year 2023 payout. If you're talking about like with success initiatives and brand initiatives, maybe a Florida State or a Miami or a Clemson could make $50 million per year in media payouts. If everything goes really well, that now we may be talking. But that's not what the standard payout is between the two leagues right now. They're about as even as it could get in fiscal year 2023 in terms of what they're paying to their teams. It's a wash. So money a wash, basketball, big advantage, Big 12. Football brands, big advantage, ACC. Tangible year one football success, Big 12 v. ACC. I'm going to go slight lean Big 12. So that's kind of the tail of the tape right now. I think it's a very nuanced discussion. I'm not naive. I know how much brands matter in college football. I know how much some of that prestige matters when you're trying to recruit a roster that could go win you a championship. I would say that the ACC brands give them an edge there in trying to do that, but they've got to prove it. So I think it's pretty close right now, man. I think it's pretty close. And I will punctuate this discussion with our web. Thank you, our web, for this reminder. Our web says, John, anytime you see 40 talk about ACC sports, just remember his daughter is a Stanford swimmer. He has a strong ACC Stanford bias. Yes, that is fair. And it certainly explains some of the, well, hey, look, ACC is dominating the Learfield Directors Cup. They're way better than the Big 12 in the Learfield Directors Cup. It was a BYU fan that hit me up the other day and was like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, well, one, it's great because it's one of those nice things. You definitely like to have it if you can. But BYU is really the only athletic department in the league that can consistently compete in that. They're the only well-resourced across the board enough athletic program out there to do it. So BYU needs to carry that flag. It's just, I would say, I guess it's really fortunate for the Big 12. Fortunately for the Big 12, that doesn't really matter all that much when it comes to conference realignment, conference strength, general conference strength right now. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel says, I can't believe that it's the same men's basketball team, referring to K-State, that Barbara and I saw play Houston. Yeah, what was that Houston game? K-State lost to Houston by 30 just 3.5 weeks ago. And now they're playing the way that they are right now. Bart Torvik had them as the number one team in the country for a 2-week stretch. The recovery has been a lot better than expected. That's good. I was very busy seeing plenty of games before surgery. Okay, good. So you got your travel in, you got your games in. Now you'll just have to watch on TV with the rest of us mere mortals. But appreciate it again. Love the support, Daniel, and hope that you are recovering very, very well and that you guys are all taking care, man. Okay. Oh boy. All right. This one may get me a little bit fired up. I'm trying to be a little bit less combative on Twitter. So I try to be very nice in my approach to this. I just sent a reply and said, hey, would love to know the justification for this, instead of trying to really, quote unquote, dunk on somebody here, especially because the man that I'm about to reference that put together this list of best coaches in the country is Ari Wasserman. And he was the guy that went and fought Paul Feinbaum on Feinbaum's ridiculous SEC bias with the Bama thing and the hypothetical wins and all the stuff that was happening around the playoff selection at the end of the year. So Wasserman was on the right side of history. Ari, why am I calling him Wasserman? Ari was on the right side of history for that. And I appreciate him for that. So that's another thing here, right? Need to respect that. But let's take a look at this list. That if you saw it, you would think, oh, that has to be engagement bait. That's just engagement bait. Here's his list of the top 25 college football head coaches. All right. Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, Sark, Marcus Freeman. I don't really have any problem with the top 5 if you want to quibble about order there. I don't know what you do. Like maybe you would say Sark above Lanning, or maybe you'd say, hey, Marcus Freeman just made the national championship game, put him above Lanning and Sark. I would have Lanning 3. I think you can argue Marcus Freeman and Sark. Dabo, between a combination of still being a good program and respect for what he's done in his career, I get. You see number 7? That's where when we get to like, oh, man, is this just an engagement bait list? It's because of number 7. Dion, man. Dion. Okay. I'm not a Dion hater. This is a part of the reason, like, I feel like we can't ever have good Dion conversations because people do things like this. Rank him way too high, so you have to come back on the other side of it and be like, well, hey, man, like, let's not get too carried away here. And then you become labeled a Deion hater. I'm very much not a Deion hater. He's done a great turnaround job to take Colorado from 1 win to 9 wins. Awesome job in 2 years. But he is not, like, we're going to give him the best coach in the Big 12. Like, Deion got called for the Cowboys gig. Outside of that, I mean, he's not Lance Leipold, Matt Campbell, Chris Kleiman getting calls for every single job that comes open, right? I mean, like, every single job that comes open, every single major job, those guys are up for it. There's a reason. Deion would get some calls for sure if Florida State came open. I'm not saying that he wouldn't. But these guys have been getting those calls for a long time. They've been doing it for a long time. And let's just compare him to, so Lance Leipold checks in at 14. Let's compare him to Lance Leipold. Lance Leipold turned around a program that was in worse shape than Colorado, less resources than Colorado, worse situation. He took them to 9 wins. I guess it did take him 3 years. He got there in the 3rd year, took him to 9 wins. He's been doing it for longer, right? Like, he's put together more sustained success here to go along with everything he did at Buffalo. There's just a lot more backing his resume. We'll see now what happens with Deion after hitting that 9-win mark this year. I would just still give the nod to Lance Leipold for keeping it together for a couple more seasons where they've been pretty damn good, and he started in so much worse of a spot. Even as bad as Colorado was, the Kansas program had been at that Colorado level for like 2 decades as the worst program in the country. So I don't like that. If we're going to go with Matt Campbell, let's comp Matt Campbell there, who's at 25 and Deion's at 7. Matt Campbell took over a similar situation. Not as bad, probably, but definitely not a place with the resources or history of Colorado. And he's hit a higher high. He's now won 11 games in a season. He has played for 2 Big 12 championships. Deion has yet to do that. He's done it over a long, sustained period of time. Like, I don't see a world where we're putting Deion above Matt Campbell right now. You can say, I think he has a higher ceiling. I think he has a higher ceiling, but he hasn't hit it yet. You can't be putting him above Matt Campbell on that list right now. The most egregious of all of this, if you haven't noticed yet, is that look who is at number 23. What are we doing? Putting Brent Venables on a list of the top 25 head coaches in college football right now. Ari, I love you. Thank you for fighting the good fight, my friend, against Paul Feinbaum. But you're going to come back and reward one of the bottom 5 coaches in the SEC with a top 25 coaches in the country spot. Like, Brent Venables is 22-17 as a head coach. 2 of those seasons were in the Big 12, which all these SEC fans would tell you is just a PUD conference. Like, what are you actually accomplishing with that? He's finished under 500 2 of his first 3 seasons. One of those was in the Big 12. He's at one of the most history-rich, resource-laden programs in the country. It's Oklahoma, man. He's at Oklahoma, and he's gone 6-7 2 of his 3 years. He's finished under 500 2 of his 3 years at Oklahoma. You got him in the top 25? Like, what? I swear I told you I'm going to get worked up. His defensive play caller just got poached by West Virginia. Like, he's got guys jumping ship on that thing for lateral moves to the Big 12. Like, come on. What are we doing here? Putting him above Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell's 13 games over 500 at the Power 5 level. He has 2 Big 12 2 conference title game appearances. None for Brent Venables. 0 for Mr. Venables. 11-win season, higher high for Matt Campbell than what Venables has done so far. And again, he's done it at Iowa State, not Oklahoma. How do you have him ranked ahead of Matt Campbell? Chris Kleiman doesn't make this list. I mean, Chris Kleiman's 20 games over 500 as a Power 5 head coach. Kleiman beat Brent Venables the one time that they matched up in Norman, beat Brent Venables, and Kleiman would go on to win a conference championship that year, which he has done. Brent Venables has not. Kleiman finishes 8 wins and above every single non-COVID year that he has been a Power 5 head coach. Brent Venables has done that once in 3 years. It doesn't make sense, man. Doesn't make sense at all. That to me, you can look at this and say, hey, the Dion thing, that's the real, I don't know, quote unquote, clickbaity kind of thing about this or whatever. But to me, it's like the Brent Venables thing is worse. The Brent Venables thing is worse. And I'm sure, to most people nationally that look at it and have the Lincoln Riley, Brent Venables debate right now. And that's the juicy part of it. I'm like, what is Brent Venables doing ahead of Matt Campbell or Chris Kleiman? Kalani Sitake, honestly, that's another one. I'd argue for Campbell above Sitake. Great job this year by Kalani Sitake. I think he's been a good head coach at BYU, but I feel like that's downplaying the sustained success that Matt Campbell has had at Iowa State. But to put Venables above either of them or Kleiman, that makes me want to pull my hair out. Makes me want to. Oh, Gundy. Wet Blanket's bringing up Gundy. Boy, that's a good point. Hadn't even considered that. Gundy was never going to get that respect this year because of how bad this season was for him. Honestly, I'm surprised that Whittingham got as much respect as he did, still up there at number 8. I don't have a lot to say about Whittingham because it's like, yes, of course, Kyle Whittingham is like a top 10 coach in college football. Quarterback injuries have derailed the last 2 seasons, but I'm fine based on his track record with keeping him there. I am. But tough break for Gundy that this is happening this year after, his worst season literally of his entire career as a head coach. If you were doing it based on overall resume, he's absolutely a top 25 coach. And then, Bill Belichick being included, that's an almost impossible one. Like, what do you do with that? I'm not going to crush that too much because, what do you do? Sharon Moore at 19. We just don't know. I don't know. He was fine. He won one massive game in an otherwise very blah year for Michigan this year. His only year as a head coach. So we're gonna rank him in the top 20 just because of the Ohio State game, which everybody seems to basically have arrived on. Well, it was just a horrible game plan, too much machismo from Ryan Day trying to prove that he was tougher than Michigan, and bad game plan, and that's what really happened there. I don't know. But that's it. That is it. Let me know what you think in the comments of that list. It was sure something. Don't be too mean to Ari. Again, he was fighting the good fight, raging against the SEC machine. I do like him. Now, I was a little. The reason I was surprised he took up the fight against the SEC this year is because he's always been kind of a big brand guy. He covered Ohio State for a long time. Anyway, I digress. There is that. Let's hop into a couple of other super chats here tonight. We got our web. We got Daniel. Hiking Cat. What's up, Hiking Cat? Cats win. John, you've got to make it to a women's basketball game. It was loud in Bramlage. It sounded loud. It looked great with everybody in the pink tonight. I would love to. It's just, again, it's a bandwidth thing. It's hard for me to – I haven't been able to get away to a men's game so far this year. I'm hoping to be there for the Kansas game on Saturday. We shall see. But it's hard, man. It's just bandwidth. It's nothing personal. It is a full-time job, the side hustle with the YouTube, a podcast, and the newsletter, and just trying to have a life. So that's all it is. But I would love to. It looked awesome, and I enjoyed watching them tonight. Maybe Hiking Cat I will get to like a K-State Final Four game this year, huh? How about something like that? Alan, what's up, Alan? Thank you for being here, Alan. Alan said he's okay. So he's tagging Daniel. It says, Daniel, good to hear you're recovering from your knee surgery. Kleiman should be on the coach list. Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Alan. Thank you for the kind words there, Alan. I love this, man. Got people within the community here trying to help each other out. That's awesome. Appreciate the well wishes there, Alan. And yes, I think Kleiman should be on the list. I know like a lot of K-State fans will freak out at the list and, Kleiman should definitely be above Lance Leipold. That's a hard one. That's a really difficult one. Like, Yes, Kleiman has beaten Lance Leipold every single time that they have coached against each other. But the last two have been really close games. I mean, really close games that you can argue. Certainly, I would argue Kansas should have won the game in Lawrence 2 years ago. I would listen to the argument about the game in Manhattan, probably slightly disagree with you, but I would listen to that argument this past year. Been coming very close. He started way behind. It's been an incredible turnaround job. They're both, I think, very good coaches. It's hard. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not super offended by that. Yes, I think Chris Kleiman probably should be on a list of the top 25 head coaches in college football, but we can quibble. We can quibble on that. What's up, Michael? Michael says, LOL is what I think. Anywho, what up, John? Well, Michael, I understand. Thank you for that. Good to see you. Good to hear from you, my friend. If you guys want to fill up the comments with LOLs, you can definitely do that. I get it. I did a little bit of LOLing at the list there, but let's you know what? Let's bring the mood back up. Michael, I'm going to bring the mood back up for everybody. And I'm going to do that by showing you this, which comes from Josh Pate, who has the most popular digital college football show that is out there. I do think he does a really good job. Yes, it leans SEC Big Ten heavy. He is from SEC country, but he does respect the Big 12. And I think you'll see what I mean with this. I think he has created the perfect conference realignment, or at least as realistically close to the perfect conference realignment scenario that we could possibly get in terms of making as many people happy as possible and giving us what college football really should be. In fact, I think this is the perfect bow to put on this entire conversation on the live show today that started with talking about the Big 12 TV schedule and rivalry week and how, yes, in an ideal world, I very much wish, and we all wish, that it could be like it was 20 years ago and rivalry week was rivalry week and we played all the rivalry games because teams were in the correct conferences and all of that. But unfortunately, that is not our reality anymore. But this is what Josh shared. So the perfect college football conferences. You see there, we've got current Big 12 teams spread out across the Big East, the Big Eight, and the group of Pac-10 and independents. So 4 different groupings here. And there will be different reactions from different folks to this, but I think for the Big 12 schools, it's going to be all good except for one. I think BYU fans are not going to be real thrilled with that, but everybody else will generally be pretty happy with this. As an old school, like Big 8 guy, man, born in 1989, I experienced the Big 8 at least until I was 6. My very, very first K-State football memories are Big 8 football. I love getting the Big 8 almost entirely back. One thing there, you'll notice. Look at who's in the Big 8 instead of Oklahoma. He puts Oklahoma in the Southwest Conference. Boy, I didn't even mention the Southwest Conference, did I? In terms of where Big 12 teams are at. So you got Big 12 teams here on this list in the Big East, Southwest, the Big 8, the Pac-10, and independents. My fault. Southwest Conference, didn't mean to forget you there. But Pate said that he wanted to include Texas and Oklahoma together. I would say, to hell with that. They played every single year without being in the same conference when it was Big 8, Southwest before that. They can do that. That's fine. But I get it. Utah fancies itself like Mountain Oklahoma. So in some ways that actually works. Like Mountain Oklahoma, Utah, you can be Mountain Oklahoma. All right. You guys think that you're that type of program every single year, totally consistent, even though, the last 2 years would indicate it's anything but that. And you were very, very humbled by your first year in the Big 12. Consider yourselves Mountain Oklahoma. The funny part about this is I just mentioned, hey, in this scenario, the Big 12 scatters into 5 different leagues. 5 different leagues. You've got 4 options there, 4 chances to get out. And Utah is one of the 2 schools not able to do so. One of the 2 newcomers, right? Of the 8 newcomers the last 2 years to the Big 12, only 2 of them stayed in the league. It was Colorado and Utah. Utah had a 75% chance to get out of the truck stop conference that they are so much better than, with the worst road trips and having to deal with Loves and Bucky's and Quick Trip and all of this. They were so close to getting out from that conference of inbreeds that they are so much better than, and yet they didn't. So maybe anybody who would have a complaint about Oklahoma not making the Big Eight in this scenario and instead being in the Southwest Conference can laugh at the fact that Utah gets stuck here. This massive restructure, reorganization of college football that Pate said he would put together if he is commissioner. This would be step one. All that, and Utah gets stuck. It's very funny. It's very, very funny. Enjoy that, Utah fans. Enjoy that. Oklahoma was in the Big Eight for 103 years, though, so I do feel like we should have, we should have done that. We should have just kicked Oklahoma into the conference, and then you get some good non-conference TV inventory with Texas, Oklahoma, Red River shootout every single year, whatever. West Virginia fans got to be pretty pumped with this, right? I get it, man. Travel. This is one of those complaints that you'll hear from a fan base, and we honestly don't give it enough run. I don't think, just in terms of like how annoying it has to be and just how legitimately detrimental it can be to your chances to win. It's all the travel that West Virginia has to do based on where they're at geographically in the conference. That is difficult. It wears on you, and it will make your job at least a little bit harder, marginally harder at West Virginia because of that. Well, now forget that. You get travel that makes sense, and you get to play some old rivals. Obviously, Pitt, chief among them, but, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, like schools like that you will get to play make a ton more sense for West Virginia. I would feel good for the Mountaineers about that. It's UCF sneaks in there. It's less travel for UCF too. I think that's my inclination there to say from Orlando, but I don't. From the East Coast, I don't know. I think I'm right in saying that, right? UCF, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for UCF to be in the Big East. They still get to be in like a quote unquote power conference in this scenario. So, okay. We've got that. Now, here's who you feel for. Arizona State going back to the Pac-10. Great. Love it. Get the conference back together. I'm sure they're fine with that. BYU, though, you feel bad for here, man. The poor Cougars, they just won 11 games in a conference. They are universally liked, it seems like, in this conference. They have been very popular. Certainly seem like more people, especially once Utah came on board and started acting the way a lot of their fans were online. And look, BYU, they're just salt to the earth people, every single one that I've come in contact with. So you get the conference camaraderie. You finally get in a league. It's tough. It's tough being out there on your own as an independent. Now you got to go back to it based on this. Utah or BYU rather they're the only school obviously in the Big 12 with the enough juice to be an independent, like actually legitimately function well as an independent, because it's hard. You've got to have the resources. A national fan base like that certainly helps. BYU can do it, but it's not the most fun. It's not as fun as the camaraderie of a conference, especially when things have been going pretty well here. So I am sorry. With the way that this worked out, Cougars. I am sorry. Oh, Michael, who is a Cougar fan, does not like it. Says, love JP, but some dumb crap. Speaking of clickbait, I don't know that this is like clickbait as much as it just is fun off-season fodder. Like, hey, we're out of the season. And he does always campaign about wanting to be college football commissioner. That has been kind of a topic. And the sport is clearly so foobarred right now with the way that conference realignment has happened and so much toothpaste that you can't put back in the tube about all these conferences. I just thought this was really fun. Yes, obviously it's going to generate engagement, but I think it's more just creating some fun content that, yes, will happen to create a lot of engagement. I don't think this is him purposely trying to bait a lot of that. So I'm with it. This type of setup, like if you got this with the college football tomorrow, I forget which, or was it the Project Rudy, whichever one of the private equity Super League scenarios had the leagues laid out very similarly like this. Like that's, this is the way that I would like it to go. I don't know. Can we make this happen in 2030, everybody? When TV deals start coming up, I would love that. I would love for that to happen. Unfortunately, this is the toothpaste that's all splattered out of the tube. This is what it would look like if it were back inside said tube, but unfortunately it is not. It is not. So yeah, I'm sorry, Michael, when I said, hey, let's go bring this mood, this vibe back up to something people will like more. I had not considered the fact that you're a BYU fan, and that would be the one area where, I think people would be very frustrated with this. Like, so I have a hard time seeing Houston, Baylor, or Texas Tech being upset about being back in the Southwest Conference. I think that would be very cool to watch all of those teams play each other every single year. So I think everybody else, pretty much everybody else, winds up being happy there. I'm certainly happy. I'm certainly happy as a Big 8 fan to have Nebraska, Missouri, still get to keep Colorado, like have those teams back in the conference that I haven't seen. I see Michael saying, well, why include Rice? Well, Rice was a member of the Southwest Conference. I mean, I guess that's basically it. Rice was a member of the Southwest Conference when it was a thing. So they got a bit of a new lease on life there. David says the Big 8 sucks in this setup. At least move BYU into the Big 9 to get the Holy War in the Big 8. One of the tenets that I know he laid out here was that he wanted the conferences to all be correct. Like no more Big 10, but there's 18 teams. He wanted them to be numerically correct. But I think we could maybe have some negotiating room on that. Get BYU back into the Big 8. I would still call it the Big 8, even if it's going to have 9 teams. I'm cool with that. I've gotten used to it enough right now. You can call it the All-State 8. Whatever you want to do with it. Hopefully not in this scenario. I guess you're not doing the All-State 8. But I can understand that. David. I don't know that the Big 8 sucks. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I guess, relatively speaking, let's go through here. Because the SEC is the SEC. The Big 10, you got Ohio State and Michigan is what it is. The Big East, the Big East is tough. The Big East and the Big 8 are probably the two with the least amount of firepower. Pac-10, you still got Oregon, ACC. You got those brands we just talked about with Florida State, Clemson, Miami, Southwest, obviously Texas, Oklahoma. I would take the Big 8 over the Big East if you did like a Big 8, Big East challenge. But you're right. It would be one of the weakest two in this scenario, which is a part of why, you might want Oklahoma there and BYU, honestly, if you could throw both of those in, that would help a little bit. But yeah, not totally perfect, but I think about as perfect as you could get here. And who knows? Maybe Nebraska gets a little bit better playing in a more back in the conference that they used to play in, not what the Big 10 has become, which is this coast to coast monstrosity. I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments. What's missing there? What would you change? Agree, disagree. It's all good. Please like the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel on your way out the door. That would be amazing. Thank you, all of you guys. If you were watching on Twitter, if you could just go over to John Kurtz on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, that would be wonderful. And subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com to do so. 3,400 Big 12 fans do. Free Big 12 news straight to your inbox twice a week. Cut through all the Big 10 and SEC news. I'll give you everything that you need to know, just how it relates to the Big 12 for free straight to your inbox. ofbnews.com or click the link in the description of this video. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out tonight. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Kansas City versus everybody on Sunday. If I don't see you or talk to you before the big game happens, go Chiefs. All right. Take care, everybody. I will talk to you soon.